Hello third graders, this is Mrs. Copeland and I'm a math teacher in Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. I'm going to be helping you with third grade memory joggers. Let's take a look at week 8, day 3, problem A. Write two multiplication and two division equations to represent this array. We have a few things to remember. Multiplication is adding equal or same size groups, and division is equal sharing or subtracting equal or same size groups. Multiplication and division are related. So let's take a look at our array. Our array has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. And we can see that because it is an array, all of the rows are equal and all of the columns are equal. We could go through and count every single square in here to see how many squares are inside this box, but really that's not the most efficient way to solve. In this case, since there's 5s, it might be an easy way for you to remember that there are 5 in each row and count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. So one thing that we could do would be to think about the fact that they're to count by 5s. So we know that if we count all of those squares in there, there would be 35. Now, what are the multiplication equations that we can see from here? There are 7 rows. Each row has 5, and there's a total of 35 squares. Another multiplication equation would be to think in terms of columns. There are 5 columns. Each column has 7, and there's still 35 squares. Notice that however we look at it, from a perspective of the rows or perspective of the columns, the number of squares inside didn't change. There's still 35. So what we're doing is we're just reversing these factors, 7 times 5 and 5 times 7. But we're still going to have the same total because that doesn't change. Division is also related. So in this case, we're starting with 35. So we know that we have a total of 35 squares. And if we were to divide that 35 into 7 rows, this array helps us see that each of those arrays would have, this helps us to see that each of those rows would have 5. So 35 total divided into 7 rows equals 5. We could also think about that in terms of columns. We have 35 columns. We have 35 squares. If we divide that into 5 columns, how many are going to be in each column? Again, this array shows us that there are 7 in each of the 5 columns. Notice this relationship between multiplication and division. Each one of these statements representing the same array have 7, 5, and 35. We can reverse the factors for the two multiplication equations, and we begin with the total, and we divide by rows or we divide by columns for the two division equations. When we divide by the rows, the columns is the number of columns is the quotient. When we divide by the columns, the number of rows is the quotient. Thank you, and if you have additional questions about this problem, please ask your classroom teacher.